Hi, I'm Kristen, and today I'm going to talk about three key aspects of the course that have been particularly impactful and I think are critical elements of what we've covered this semester. The first is this definition of customary international law. And I think that by nature is very confusing because it's not all in one place. And I finally felt like toward the end of the semester, it's beginning to click, especially as I begin to read the cases. And I feel like that's perhaps been the most helpful part of understanding what makes up customary international law. And I feel like my understanding has really changed. I'd covered that in previous classes, but this is the first time I feel like I really truly understand it. The second key aspect is the definitional aspect of war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide. And I feel like that's a particularly important part of the course that also is really difficult. And I think the cases in particular have been really helpful in understanding that element of it and trying to figure that particular material out. My favorite assignment all year was the last quiz we did because I felt like we had a real set of facts that we had to apply the elements of crimes to. And I felt like that process for me really helped me to understand how to put everything together. And the final element of the class that perhaps for me was the most important element is the emotional aspects of the victim's part of this crime. And what I mean by that is I think that there's a huge differential between the reality of the factual basis for things like genocide and crimes against humanity and the actual experience of the victims. And before, my entire focus had been on the facts. This happened, this occurred, and it was awful. But I really had not stopped to consider what was it really like, and I was dumbfounded when I watched the scope of the brutality in the movies. I'm the kind of person that doesn't even like to watch sad movies, and so for me, I found it particularly heartbreaking to sit and to hear the stories like the ones in Liberia where 70% of the population had been raped. You just hear things like that and you sit there and you're stunned and you're taken aback and you realize that there is a much broader narrative about issues like crimes against humanity and genocide that are incomplete until we really understand what's going on from the victim's perspective. And I feel like watching the videos really did give me insight into them. I didn't enjoy watching the videos, but I feel like I'm really changed because I did. And I talk a little bit about that in my journals as I process that information and begin to experience it. I think my biggest takeaway is that it's really important to understand the elements and it's important to understand the law, but it's also really important to understand this concept of justice and truth. It's important to understand the dichotomy between the two and the tensions between the two. And it's important to understand that these are real people with real stories and they've really been impacted by what's occurred. And that profoundly changed me. And I think that's my biggest takeaway from the class. The class has been super helpful and super challenging, but I think I've really been changed by the fact that I've been able to hear a portion of a side of the story that I really never experienced before. Thanks.